Wow. I've never been, wait, I have been live streamed before. Never mind.
All right, it just takes a second for it to pop up on my computer, but I'm pretty sure we're live right now. Yep. We sure are.
I've never been, wait, I have been live streamed before.
Okay. And there's about a 10-second or so delay, 20-second delay as well. So if you shouldn't hear any feedback at this point. Does everything sound okay?
Yeah.
All righty. What's going on, everybody? Hey, good evening. It's Letitia with BearFruit Gardening. I hope that you are doing exquisite. So today we are live, y'all, with some peeps from my city, y'all, and representing all different types of organizations. And I will let them introduce themselves here in just a second, but y'all know I got to come at y'all again with some crazy stuff, right? And by crazy, I mean it in the best way, right? I just want to learn, and I hope that y'all are ready to learn too. But let's talk about what is so sexy about sustainability. I just feel like I've always heard this word before, this concept, but never really grasped what it really meant. Right. And the first thing my mind goes to all the time is the environment. And I say this a lot, and I don't mean any pun or what disrespect or whatever, but I've never really considered myself like a tree hugger. Right. and so I've always kind of shied away from those groups or those people that are just like, save the planet, save the earth, and that might seem really crazy because I always talk about reduce, reuse, recycle, right, on my channel. And as a matter of fact, I teach in a lot of people in my local community about how to reuse things, right, to start their gardens, buckets, pots,
right,
bowls, even aluminum foil containers. I teach them how to use everything. But I've never really considered being one of those people that have been 100% engaged in my behavior as it relates to how I treat the environment and the space around me until I decided that one day to just respond to this calling, I guess, or of some sort to the soil. And so now my life has forever been changed because my eyes are just open in so many different ways. Like I'm just seeing so many different things differently. And then as I engage with people like Amanda and Melina and Justin, who are on this call today, thank y'all so much for joining me. And other groups in the community related to agriculture, I am finding myself wanting to learn more about what the heck this means and why is it so sexy? Meaning, why are people so attracted to it now, right? And not just individuals, but businesses, big corporations, university. I mean, they are really putting some money into sustainability. So I don't consider myself an expert. I'm here to learn. Yes, I have a few questions to ask, but we're going to just go with the flow, right? And I made that confession to this group. I'm not an expert at all, but we do have a few experts. And then a few people that just have some things to say, right, to get off their mind. So I'm excited to have everybody here. Please, please, please introduce yourself, you all. And we can let's start with Amanda first. We'll go Melina and then Justin last.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Fuller, and I met Letitia through the Urban Agriculture Coalition here in Louisville. And I have been an urban grower really ever since I moved here to Louisville, but before that, and just try to grow stuff in any vacant space I can find in the city. So just love what Letitia's doing, and we really connected eagerly. on that point, but also have been an enthusiast on sustainability for a long time. Justin and I live together and we are car-free household. I'm sure people want to talk about that. And other weird things that we do are also really fun ways of living that, you know, people would put under the umbrella of sustainability. So glad to be here with you all, and like excited to learn likewise from all the rest of you and hear some new ideas.
I'm Melina Hettiarachi. I am new to Louisville-ish. Pandemic makes time not matter anymore. But yeah, moved here and got connected. I don't even remember how I got connected with Food in Neighborhoods, but that's where I met Letitia, either in the policy action group or in Urban Ag. I don't know, because I do both. But I am like new to the career. My mom calls me a hippie lineal, and she thinks that that's what we should start calling all of us, like young people who are very into sustainability and eco-conscious. I mean, like my Instagram feed is full of ads actually for sustainable brands and stuff. And I fall for it a lot. And so I have a lot of thoughts on like greenwashing and, like you said, corporate sustainability. I fancied myself going into corporate social responsibility law and like holding corporations accountable to like corporate social responsibility agreements and stuff, but I don't do contracts. So that's not me. But yeah, I am also, I'll be honest, I'm more excited to like yell about sustainability, because like I also try to do lots of things at home, but I'm sick and tired of this idea that like individuals are responsible for like global climate change issues. And that's where sustainability starts, is at home. And I'm over that. So I have lots of feelings and really excited to talk about it.
And hey, everybody, I'm Justin Mogg. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator at the University of Louisville, and I'm joining you today from Forward Radio, which is your community radio station right here in Louisville, 106.5 FM, and you can find us at forwardradio.org. I'm the host of a show called Sustainability Now, and that's where I first met Letitia, was getting to interview her on my show. So check out the archives at forwardradio.org if you want to hear that first conversation, that spark of joy at getting to meet Letitia and learn about what she does. And she's really inspired me ever since I met her too. But yeah, I've been trying to live this life of sustainability since I first encountered the concept back in the late 90s in college. And I read about this concept of sustainable development, and it just blew my mind. Because like you were saying, Letitia, like up until that point, I had everything in these boxes, in these silos in my brain, where like, I'm not just an environmentalist. I don't feel like I'm just an environmentalist. I'm just not just a social justice warrior. I don't just want peace. I want it all. And suddenly I had this concept of, oh my gosh, we can have it all through sustainability. And that's what's so exciting about it, is it is the original intersectionality. Like we talk about intersectionality today, and I get why we're talking about it now today, but there's an intersectionality too to how we think about problems and how we solve them. And it's integrating all of those different ideas into this concept of sustainability that makes it so exciting and endlessly sexy, if you ask me, because it's not just about solving and fixing one thing, right? It's not just about trees. It's not just about recycling. It's not just about social justice. It's about solutions that actually work for everybody and the planet all at once. And it's difficult, but I think it's sexy.
Me too, Justin. I love how you put that. So I wanted to kind of, for folks that are not sure like what sustainability is, because Justin kind of helped us get there. I just Googled, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and this is their definition in so many words. So sustainability is everything we need to survive and enhance our quality of life directly or indirectly, depending on our natural environment. So our responsibility apparently is to create and maintain conditions in which humans and nature can exist in harmony. Do we agree? with that definition.
Well, that's part of it, right? But you left out all the social and the economic piece of it too. People talk about, like, there's so many ways to conceptualize this. Like a three-legged stool is a simple one to think about, right? Like the stool's going to fall over if you've only got the environment piece solid, right? And if you're in harmony with nature, that's great. But if people are being abused in the process, or if you don't have a functioning economy, or your finances are all screwed up, that stool is going to topple, right? And so that's the idea. It's like it's a balancing act all the time of balancing these different values. So that's one way to conceive of it. The other way is like, the Venn diagram of overlapping circles, social, economic, and environmental, and where they all meet, that's sustainable development. But I really like the concentric circle idea, because if we think about, like, we don't have an economy without society, right? So the economy circle's got to be in the middle of the society circle, right? And we don't have any of those things if we don't have a functioning planet to live on, right? So we say that the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. Yeah, right. So in a way, sustainability all got started because we realized that we were really screwing up the planet, and that was screwing us up and our economy up. And if we don't fix that, we're doomed. But in the process of trying to fix the environment, environmentalists started to realize that, oh, well, that's good, but we also need a society where justice is at the forefront, and all people are treated equally, and we also have a functioning economy. So all three of those things need to happen for true sustainability, and we need to seek solutions that work in all three of those realms.
Yeah, I think that also comes to, like, where I think sustainability and my whole, vendetta against corporate social responsibility nonsense, is that, like, what we're dealing with now, and I think this goes to Letitia's original question of why is it sexy right now, is like you've got this, I think, reawakening, but very much like very huge social push to reckon with. Stop going for the bottom line. Like, if you're always decreasing your bottom line, you are sacrificing something. You're sacrificing your labor, you're sacrificing your environment, you're sacrificing the quality of materials. And we've done that for so long that, like, a good example is fast fashion. Fast fashion is very much in the news right now with, like, my entire generation. And I would say maybe the generation before me has no idea what it's like to have handmade clothes, like to have clothes handed down very well, like where it's cheaper to keep your clothes and mend them. Like, we don't know how to mend our own clothes. We don't know how to sew a hem or a button. And it's not because, like, it's not just because we weren't taught and, like, that individual responsibility of it, but it's like, it's cheaper to just go to Target and buy a new shirt, or to Walmart and buy a new shirt. So why not just do that? And then you can, think you're doing okay by handing it down or something, but that's not right either. But I think that that's a good example of when the fashion companies kept cutting their costs over and over, they stopped recycling their water. They stopped using safe dyes. They stopped using, like, ethical labor practices, no more fair trade, like all of those things. That makes it cheaper for us. Now we have to pay for the consequences of that. Yes, we weren't paying then. Now we are paying for it.
Yeah, I think thinking about the concentric circles at different scales also makes me think about how we think about the way we operate and the way we live at different scales. Like, to me, I think you can think about, like, your household as, like, using the things and the resources that you have as efficiently as you can, right? Like, using your own soil, like, assuming you have, like, if you're lucky enough to have land, right? Like, if you have land, you have, like, rain that falls on the land. Can you use that water? You have soil. Can you grow something in the soil? Can you make habitat for other creatures? Like, at different scales, like, sustainability is like using something efficiently and, like, making use of the resources you have available to you, right? Like, you can't have everything because you only have a certain amount of resources to work with. And, like, the same at a city level or a community level, like, are we making use of all the resources that we have? Like, yes, it's soil and water, but it's also the human people who live in the community. Like, are those people being, like, educated? Are they being trained? Are they, like, being, like, offered the resources that they need to, like, actualize themselves and contribute and, develop their talents and skills? Like, or if we're not doing that, that's not sustainable. Like, we need to develop and make sure we're efficiently using what's available to us. And that goes, like, expanded out. It goes to the whole planet. Like, we can only use what we have. So we have to think about, like, the planet is it's like the biggest concentric circle. How do we use what we have only in that circle and make sure that everything is, like, contained within it? And yeah, you're not going to have everything the way it looks like right now, but you can live a very, like, healthy, fulfilling life and sleep better at night, knowing that the world is healthier and then your neighbors are healthier, and maybe you know who your neighbors are.
I think Amanda was touching on a really important point there. Something that fundamentally about sustainability that makes it sexy is it's about community. You can't be
Exactly. I was gonna
sustainable
say it's a moral
alone,
imperative.
right? There is no just sustainable me, and it's all about a community process, and that means relationships inherently. You got to know people, and that makes people interesting when they're networked and connected with others and know their neighbors, or know enough to be resilient, right, with others. And I tell you what, the other reason this is really important, I work with young people every day at U of L. Climate anxiety is a real deal amongst these people, right? They have been bombarded with the news that we are doomed, y'all. Like, we have already driven off the cliff and it's all over. And yet here they are in college trying to figure out like how to make a better life for themselves. And it's this cognitive dissonance. Well, along comes sustainability, and suddenly you have a solution. You have a path to empowerment that says you do make a difference. Your life does matter, and we're only doomed if you give up. But if we work together in community to find a better way forward together, well, that's exciting. And so that's your way out of climate anxiety, is to do something about it. And as much as the science is scary, and I agree that it is a scary moment, don't deny that, but use that as a driving force to get you to do action. Because there's no time to party and just fiddle while the planet burns. Like, this is a moment of crisis, and we do need to take action, and it's exciting to take action in so many different ways. It can be as simple as like what you're eating today on your plate, or it can be as complicated as joining a movement to stop fossil fuels, right? Like, there's so many places along that spectrum where you can dive in community and start making a difference, and it's exciting work.
Like building a community grocery store.
Yeah,
there you go. I was going to say, let's talk about what are some of those attainable things that we can do. Like, because when I think about sustainability or saving the earth or whatever, I just feel like that's too big for me. And so like, it's like, what can I do here at my, and then someone mentioned that it's not an individual person's responsibility, but that we have to all do it together. But like, I'm still trying to like figure out which part of this I can chew on my own, and then or being involved or networking with people that are trying to do the same things. That way I don't feel alone too.
And it's a constant learning process too. And I think I was, the one who's like, I'm tired of being told like me not using straws is going to save the planet. Like, okay. I think we've all agreed that was some bait and switch nonsense by whoever was against the straws. But it was, I think about how I have one Instagram account, and I wish I remembered her name, but she does a really good job of saying, if you can do some things, those are the things you can emotionally put forward. Stop letting people tell you you're not doing enough. If you're doing your best, that's it. So if what matters to you is composting at home and figuring out how to have a home compost pile, freaking compost. It's an everyday thing to compost. So every day you would be putting a little bit more towards a sustainable way to use your waste again.
That's right.
As opposed to, your freaking straws. Nobody like, if straws are your thing, fine, let straws be your thing, but like, stop preaching to other people about it. And I think that's where sustainability being sexy is also a thing where, just like the idea of being sexy, it's being policed as well. Are you doing enough? Is it sexy enough at home? Like, we signed up for Louisville Compost Co-op. So happy that we did that, because that's basically municipal compost. It's way better than my compost pile at home. And I was composting wrong at home. So like, really great that I did that, putting the wrong stuff in your compost means you can't really use it, but it didn't go to a massive landfill, and that's better, right? So I'm still not kicking myself for putting the wrong stuff in the compost. It's better than it was. Switching to dryer balls instead of dryer sheets, because dryer sheets have all kinds of gross chemicals that get into the water system. Well, yeah, my freaking great grandmother was probably also using dryer balls. So why do we have to go back to using dryer balls? But now I am. I'm better off for it. I know the stuff's not getting into the water. But then on top of that, you can replace your water filter in your washer so that when the washer drains all that stuff that has like microplastics from our clothes, you can get one and have a more efficient one than whatever your washer comes. I didn't even know that was a thing, but a company that I love that sells leggings that are made of recycled plastic sells these more efficient water filters. And that's an example of like a company saying, if you care about this, here's a way you can upgrade what you're doing. You don't have to do it, but pick the things that are important to you. You know, you watch a few videos, you do a few things, and you do it at home, and that's fine. I truly believe that it's more about like Kroger saying they're not going to have plastic bags to put their produce in anymore, allowing market bags, allowing buying bulk produce and stuff like, and there are models where they're already doing that stuff. It's not new. That's the other thing about sustainability is I think it's central to sustainability is none of it is new. It is stuff we were doing before, or we could easily implement, and we stopped because it was cheaper.
Yes, and been doing it way before. Amanda and I were kind of having this conversation about canning earlier. You know, our ancestors, our grandparents, great grandparents, they were doing so many things already, right? It just happens now we call it sustainability. We call it, you know, like composting.
Which also goes to like the idea that it's a social and economic issue, because this idea that when we do better, like economically, then we have money to spend on luxuries. You don't have to reuse every little thing because you're not worried that it's not going to be there. But I can almost guarantee you, anybody who's grown up financially insecure knows how to save and knows how to be sustainable. Like, you know how to do it, but your family may also have bought like the least organic products that have ever existed because it was cheaper, and that's not their fault. And we shouldn't be kicking those people to the curb because of it. But I think that that's a big piece, is like, it's cheaper to be sustainable in a lot of ways. And then the things that aren't cheaper for an individual to do, I believe corporations should be doing. So that's really the crux of my sustainability beliefs.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Like, how do we get from individual responsibility and like away from like the policing sensibility? Like, I think some level of peer pressure is how movements grow. And so there's like something there to sharing what you're doing with other people and like sharing the joy of what you're doing with other people so that they will be encouraged to like ditch their car and get on a bike, for example.
Yeah. And how easy
so
it can
joyful,
be.
right? How easy, that's right. Like showing people how easy something is to do. But then we have to get to that systems change where, you know, making our roads safe so that people know that it's safe to ride a bike, because some people still are going to be afraid. So, you know, talk about that. Like, I want to hear, you know, your all's experiences, or Letitia, your ideas about how do we get people from that sense of like, let's reuse some stuff and make a cool thing at home to like, let's discover what's wrong about what's making it hard for other people to do this, or, you know, where we need to advocate for better policy change. I know you all are involved in policy advocacy, so you've already gotten there, you know, and you've sort of seen those connections.
Yeah, first off, before Melina, I would like for you to talk, Justin, I would like for you to talk a little bit about Amanda's comment. But before we get to that, I'm about to make a t-shirt and if anybody wants to buy it, let me know. It's going to say, stop policing my sexy, #sustainability. So, Justin, do you have a comment to Amanda's?
Well, actually, what I was noodling on was going back to what we were talking about earlier about looking to the past for sustainability ideas. I think that's great because, you know, there's a lot of things about past cultures that are more sustainable, especially with environmental impact, because we've seen that the you know, ever since we started relying on fossil fuels and started expanding our use of chemicals, all of those things have really amped up the environmental impact of things. But the cautionary note there is there's a hell of a lot unsustainable about past cultures. You know, like, you want to amp up the patriarchy and the racism, you just look to the past. So it's not like we just got to go back in our little time machine to some halcyon days when everything was all that, and that's all we got to do, right? Like, this is a forward progression, right? And we take the good and we filter out the bad, and that's how we get to greater sustainability, in my mind. I mean, there are things that I like to do that feel a little bit like, Ludditism, right? Like I like to not use, I like to filter out some of the technologies that just come marching along because I don't think they're good for me and I don't think they're good for the planet either. So the car was the first one I filtered out of my life. I was like, when I was 15 and everybody else is getting driver's license, I was like, no, I'm going to try living without this damn thing. And boy, has that been liberating and wonderful. But several other things have come along, and some people look at my life and they're like, well, you're living in the past, but to me, it's I'm living healthy and mentally
That's so important.
healthy,
I was
right?
going to say that earlier because I think that's another reason it's sexy now, especially with younger generations. Like my youngest sister is about to graduate college. She's getting a minor in sustainability, but she is also part of this like entire age group that is so aware of mental health needs and like understanding, right, like climate anxiety or like work-life balance and how we don't have it, and things like that have come along that are the least sustainable practices tend to be things that like they're hurting us mentally as well and emotionally as well. So I think about like my, planned obsolescence phone, right? My planned obsolescence phone that's made by children in slave labor practices also causes me a lot of anxiety because people can contact me all the time, like anywhere I go. And there's Facebook and there's Twitter and there's all of these things that like are not really good for me. So then I have to work into my phone planned hours where it rains and things like that. Well, I could just not have it. And then I'm not contributing to that. But my one purchase of a phone, I still don't feel like does enough, right? So we talk about like some of our obsolete technologies that they were made to last for years. Like I just bought a record player because I am that age and we do that stuff now. But I have my record player and going to the store, they're like, yeah, this is going to last you it's been around since 1979. Your record player specifically, it still has some of the same parts on it and it still works. Yeah. And that's how they were meant to be. And so again, the corporations being like, well, what if we made them buy more things? Like that was on purpose, which is also the plot of a Brave Little Toaster Goes to the Moon or Goes to the Mars movie. That movie's from the 90s. And that's the plot of the movie is planned obsolescence.
Yep.
Show your kids that shit. They will not want a phone. Not kidding.
Yeah, the question of mental health is a huge one and we don't talk about it very much. We do, hey, look, it's Vaughn. We talk so much about like your physical health and like maybe it's like you're physically active, like you're walking or biking or you're eating healthy food or you're doing farming, which is physical, and you're growing your own food, which is healthy. And we talk about that a lot, or we think about that a lot, but like I don't hear people talking a lot. And so I really try to talk about this in like encouraging other people to undertake these things. Like I sleep very well at night, not just because I work hard during the day, but also because my mental health is better because I am outside a lot. I'm riding my bike. I'm doing things that bring joy to my life. And I'm not working a job that I hate. I'm not like surrounding myself with people who make me angry. There is like a big mental health component to that. And I'm really glad to hear that like younger people are grabbing onto that. It's like maybe all you have when you're 20, right? That you have to find something that, makes you excited to keep going. But like the question of like, can we be sustainable with racism lingering is like, it speaks right directly to that though, like no one is free until everyone is free. That's right. Like we can't sleep that well at night knowing that, our brothers and sisters still are not liberated. So that is a huge part of sustainability too, is like building that community, knowing people, knowing your neighbors, and figuring out how to like link your arms with people and really connect and share those resources, share knowledge. That's like a huge part of sustainability, and like building that community is really like a huge part of building our own like collective mental health, I think.
Yes, thank you all so much for your comments. If you're just now joining us, hey everybody, y'all know who I am, but I got some folks on here that are so dope, right? And we're talking about why or what is it about sustainability that's so sexy. And we have somebody that just joined the call and the panel rather. And this is Vaughn from Kentucky and the Backyard Farms. Vaughn, we would love to see your face, but if you can't show it, that's okay. He always tunes in via the cell phone too, because he's always busy. But please feel free to jump in whenever you can. So we're just talking about a few things. If you want to introduce yourself real quick, I'll let you do that, and then we'll get back to it.
Yeah, I'm actually in the middle of cutting down and hauling some trees. And I was like, man, I got to get back on. I got to get to this call. But I will definitely, if I can show my face here in a little bit, I will. I got to dry off for a second. But I love where the conversation is already going.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming in and hanging out with us. So, Melina, I love this. You kind of want to circle back around to go ahead and just go ahead and tell the people what you're doing.
Justin had mentioned we talked about technology, but also looking at past cultures, and I wanted to challenge that a little bit. I guess hinting at looking at indigenous cultures, and indigenous cultures are still today. So that's a big interest area of mine. Also, is indigenous and native law, and I don't think I ever mentioned I am technically a lawyer in Kentucky, but don't know what I'm doing yet. So, but that is something that I'm very passionate about. And I went to law school in California, where my law school was also doing a lot of reckoning with literally being funded with the proceeds of an ethnic genocide of a tribe in California. And so what do we do about that? And we talked about native law and policy, where people just aren't talking about the current issues facing our native and indigenous groups in this country. And one of those you hear about a lot is land back initiatives and giving the land back. But I watched a video today from Greta Thunberg where she's addressing the Brazilian Senate over bills that they're talking about that have to do with access to land, mining rights in the Amazon. And she sets it up so beautifully. I love her as an activist because she sets up that she's not the person who should be talking to Brazil, because she's I'm from a part of the world that created the crisis you're having to deal with right now, first of all. But I also think what you're doing is shameful, because you know that there are solutions and you're choosing not to take them. And it's your government that's at fault for these illegal and legalized logging practices and mining practices. And you have a population here that is so good at being land stewards and resource stewards, where she said it was they're 3% globally. Indigenous people are 3% of the population, but they have over 75% of biodiversity lands, biodiverse lands that they're protecting. And that's because they're better land stewards than national park guardian. And I love our national parks. I love parks. I love the park system. But when you're talking about land stewardship, that's the population that knows what's up and knows how to do it well. And we're just not utilizing them. And that goes back to Amanda talking about are all the people in your community being used efficiently, and I don't want to say we're using people, but that knowledge and that institutional understanding of how things work, not only was it jeopardized through the ethnic genocide in our country's history, but we're still not respecting it today. And so I think that's a big piece of sustainability that I think is not part of the sexy part. And that's a problem, where we're thinking the sexy part is what, to be quite frank, white girls on Instagram, what they say you should do. But then you bring up native law and they're no, we're not giving any land back. No, we're not stopping an oil pipeline.
We're just buying cuter shoes.
Yeah. And we're not even paying indigenous artists. Excuse me. No, you don't get to wear the fancy turquoise jewelry and not pay an indigenous artist, right? So, I have obviously lots of feelings about that, but I think that that's very key in our sustainability conversations is also what's not sexy about sustainability. And it tends to be when people of color want to talk about it.
Boom, what you said, 110 gazillion percent. I love everything about what you just said. I just want to take a moment to give a shout out to the chat. What's going on, Ecocentric? Good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Ecocentric Homestead says, to be sustainable, we have to look at the big picture. Most people just consider the me, mine, and the now. Yeah. Hello. And I agree 100%. Hey, Lola, what's going on? Lola Granola. It's good to see you. I haven't heard from you in a while. It's good to hear from you. But yes, so I definitely agree with all the comments. Anybody else have anything else you would like to, anybody want to respond to Melina's comment? Justin, Amanda, anybody?
I mean, it's right on. What sustainability is going to look like is going to be different for everybody in every place. And that's something we've got to keep in mind, that this isn't a one size fits all solution. It's not like, oh, we just got to buy the right thing or get the process set up the right way. Just, I got to follow the textbook on sustainability. That's not how this happens. This is a struggle, a daily struggle to figure out what's going to work now, because sustainability is about responding to the ever changing conditions that are all around us. Those are environmental conditions. Obviously, that's where the whole climate resilience thing comes in, right? But also the social and the economic conditions that are all around us. And then culture, it's such an important part of it. You know, there is no sustainability without a sustainable culture, and everybody's a part of a culture, and we cannot assume that it's going to look the same in all different cultures. It's not. That's what sustainability is. It's diversity. It's built on the strength of diversity. And so it's very difficult for us in the West, you know, especially in academia. I work in a university where we all think we've got all the answers, right? And it's about asking the experts what's up. Well, in a way, there's stuff you can learn from the experts, obviously, but it's about adapting it to what makes sense for me and what makes sense in my culture. That's where true sustainability happens.
I agree with that. I mean, one size doesn't fit all, and that's the issue with policy, I think. I know that's the issue with policy. And some of that was very intentional, right? Most of it was. We don't want it to fit all shoes and walks of life and environments. But yeah, you're right. Like what happens in zone 7A and what we need to fix in Kentucky may not be what California needs to fix or come together and figure out a plan for. But yeah, any thoughts about that?
Can we, now that we're talking about culture and like what fits everybody, can we talk about how you guys don't have a car? Like I lived in San Francisco where I loved public transportation. We only had a car because it moved with us like from North Carolina, but we never used it. Nice. And we only used it to go like to the grocery store for like hauls. Like if we had lots of things, otherwise we took the bus, we took the train. Like I never had to use a car. Even my husband, who had to commute like over an hour down to his job, they had a shuttle system. So that like that was a bus. And then moving here, I was all like, I'm taking the bus to places. And we live in the Highlands, and I had a job downtown, and I thought I would take the bus and couldn't. Like, I was like, I cannot wait 30 minutes for a bus and then the bus to be late. And then I'm 20 minutes late to work. Like, I don't understand, especially when it's downtown, right? Like in San Francisco, it was like constantly a complaint that we had that it took you 30 minutes to go 2 miles in a car. But on a bus or a train, it was reliable. I could see where my bus was. Like, even if you didn't, everybody else was in the same boat. So like, you could walk into class late and be like, sorry, the N wasn't running. And they're like, yeah, we know, the professors are also late. You know, like everyone could do that. And that's why it was a culture that was way more sustainable. But then I moved here and was like, wait a second, I can't take the bus anymore. And I don't understand. I also didn't really learn to ride a bike, and I'm working on that, like emotionally. Like I'm trying to get into the bike life, I promise. But so how do you manage? What do you do?
Well, first of all, like I have taught adult women to ride bikes before, so I will gladly adopt you as a
Tell me what kind of bike to get too, because I don't even know how to buy a bike.
Okay, see, we can start from the beginning on that. Like that would be a super fun project. I would love that. And I know that a lot of younger people are not learning to ride bikes. Like we've been learning this, from like, I'm Generation X. I feel like everybody learned to ride a bike when I was a kid, but I know they're like our land development situation in the United States is such that some people don't live in places where they really are learning to ride bikes as kids, or there's no place to go if you do ride a bike. And so it's sort of like a realization that I've had recently that like, that's a thing that I hope we're not losing that skill. Like we lost canning or it's something,
like,
but
I know how to ride. And I know so many people who know how to ride. I don't know how to ride in traffic and also in a place that isn't bike friendly.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yep.
no, thank you. I'm not trying to
Okay.
get hit today.
Okay.
that
So that's a
was
different matter, but I mean, also super like on point. Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I will let Justin tell the story. I mean, his story is where it's starting the story of why we don't have a car.
Mhm.
But I can pick it up and continue that story.
Well, and it's one of the things I was thinking earlier about, what makes sustainability sexy is that it's a bit of a rebellion, right? It is countercultural.
So true.
Counter to the mainstream culture, right? It's its own culture in a way, but it is when you think about high school, right? Like, well, like the bad guys and the bad girls, that's who we find sexy, right? Like the rebels. And that, to me, that's always been what's drawn me to it, is like, I don't like what I'm seeing out there in the world. I'm going to rebel against it. And so one of those things was cars, and I'm just going to adopt this personal war on cars.
Oh, you're that guy, the guy without a phone, right?
See if
I
I
think a
can
comedian
figure
has
out.
a skit about the guy without a phone. Like, you're that guy.
Yeah. See if I can figure out a way to make life work without cars. And that happened when I was 15. And my dad took me and my brother on a cross country bike trip from our home in DC to Seattle. And I'm like, well, if I could do that, I can get to school and anywhere else on a bike. So I've been doing it ever since. When I met Amanda, she still had a car, but was starting definitely to move towards car-free living, and eventually got rid of her car. And we started car sharing with neighbors, which you can do right now. You don't have to wait.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for some corporation to set up a car share system in your city. Just start with your neighbors. Say, we're going to share this car. We're going to share the insurance costs. We're going to share the gas costs. We're going to keep a little clipboard in there, and we do it evenly, right? Like, you can set up your own solution with your neighbors, because not everybody needs their car every day to do everything, right? And so when we start, again, living in community, true community with other people, and we share resources like a car, then things like living in my household without a car becomes realistic, because there's going to be times you might want one.
Which is such a good point, because like, I think we have this rhetoric that cities are not conducive to cars, which they're not, right? Like, they're built like to have a car, like nothing else. You can't really walk, you can't really bike. We've built them the wrong way to make it a real communal, outside of the bubble of your car kind of community. But then I think about like my sister who lives in the middle of nowhere outside of Birmingham, and off the main exit of the interstate, there's a parking lot where everybody stops and does car sharing. So they all drive to that one spot, and then they get picked up, and they all go to their jobs. And like, that's a very common thing in immigrant communities, people who do lots of like construction work. I guess like another like social economic like piece of, I just never thought of it. And it's a part of the privilege that I have that I had never even thought. And I did think about, there's like a Louisville car share thing. Like, there's a van that like does to certain places or something here, but
you're talking about like a van pool or carpooling. Yeah. Which is also a good thing. Like, I would definitely be an advocate for either of those things, but what we're talking about is something a little bit different.
Right.
A car share would be like sharing a lawnmower with your neighbor. Like,
you don't use,
like, nobody's all using their lawnmowers at the same time. Right? Like, y'all could share a lawnmower, like five households could, legit share a lawnmower, and you don't need like 5 lawnmowers in the world. You really only need one. So the car is the same way. Like, when I got rid of my car, there was a book in the late 90s or early 2000s called Divorce Your Car. And this woman wrote about her journey to deciding to get rid of her car and learning to live without a car. It was a thing. And I was working with a couple people at that time who had just divorced their cars in like 2002 or so. And so I set it up with a friend that I had a car that was old, that was like, I wasn't paying any car payments on it or anything. And my other friend had the same deal. She owned a car and wasn't paying any car payment. Neither of them were particularly nice cars. I decided to get rid of my car, and we used her car as a car share. And this was like in the olden days, we had a clipboard in the car. We wrote down the miles that we drove. Now you'd probably use an app or whatever. There's other ways of figuring this out. And then like, we shared the insurance costs. We shared everything else, like according to the miles that we drove. So at the end of the month, we would like settle up and be like, okay, I drove like 40 miles. I'm going to pay this much. My friend drove 60 miles. And so we're going to split the gas, whatever, and it's like a fraction of what you'd pay to own a car, or like pay car payments on a car, for crying out loud. Very cheap and then easy. Like, we would just, when we needed the car, like I had out of town meetings. Sometimes I needed a car like once every couple of weeks, and I didn't need it to go to work, so I rode my bike. So it's a thing that can help be the right kind of incentive or motivation to do the right thing. Like, to me, like, the good thing to do has to be the easy thing. So my other joke to people, if you want to change your habits, is like, freeze your keys in an ice cube in the freezer. Take your car keys and put them in an ice cube. You know, make it hard to drive your car, and then you will find other ways to get around. Like, that's the thing, is like, if somebody's car breaks down and they use their car as the only transportation, they don't know what to do if there's something wrong with their car, right? Whereas me, like, I know 3 other ways to get to where I'm going because I don't have that car. You know, like, I already know 3 other ways that I'll get to where I'm going if I don't have that option. So it'll make you like a little more mentally nimble and creative. You know, I think creativity is a huge element of sustainability and problem solving.
And I'll also just say really quick to touch on Melina's point about being afraid. You know, knowledge is power, and experience equals no fear. So I'm on the same roads that people are in Louisville are deathly afraid of. Wouldn't imagine riding their bike on. How can you possibly do it? And I have very little fear. You know, I actually know the science tells us it's more dangerous per mile to be in a car going at great speeds.
Right.
Right. So once you're going to get used to it and start doing it, that fear starts to evaporate, and it actually feels fun and joyful and powerful again. But it takes a little time to get there. And it can, the way to get over it is to do it with friends, right? Like, build that community. And if you have enough critical mass of cyclists in a city who can support each other, and literally more bikes on the road means safety, more safety for everybody. Because then drivers are experienced with them and know how to deal with them, and bikes know how to use the road, and everybody's happier. But it can be tough to be the only one in your neighborhood to do anything in sustainability. But if we don't have those leaders starting it out, you know, we're never going to make any progress. So it takes some risk, some personal risk, to, like any good fight, right?
I was going to say, like, all of what you, like, your intro to this was like, oh, I mean, I could think about that for literally everything in my house, like, that I'm trying to do sustainably. Is like, it does take a little bit of fear, like, you're going to get it wrong, right? Like the compost story, right? Like, I'm going to get my compost wrong. Did I just waste all, like, 2 years of composting? Well, I mean, I still got some dirt, but it ain't organic. Like, that's going to be okay for some things. So I think that's a big piece, is like, the fear of getting started is always going to be there, and the fear of change is always going to be there. But if it's something you believe in, which I think is what's so important about sustainability, and, you know, sustainability, like we've all said, is it's so interconnected to so many different issues. It's very easy to pick what's sustainable in your wheelhouse to focus on. And then, like, you're doing your part there. You can expand, you can educate others, and then they do it. And then it's a whole, like, pay it forward effect. And I think that's a really great place to be. I mean, like, I don't farm, and I'm not a solid gardener. We have some herbs in a container out back, and, like, we use those instead of buying herbs, like, at the store. So that's pretty dope. But, you know, we used to have a rain barrel, and that was a big deal. It's ugly. Like, it's in the front of my house in the Highlands, but I made sure when we sold our house, we were not taking the rain barrel. And I joked, I was like, every house I move to, I'm putting in a rain barrel. I'm replacing the windows to be more efficient. We're going to have a compost bin. I was like, we're just going to put them in people's houses, and then you'll figure it out, or you won't. Like, it'll be okay.
Yeah, that same fear about the streets applies to everything in agriculture and urban agriculture too. Like, people are afraid of worms. People are afraid of bees. People are afraid of all these things that truly sustain us, right? And people are afraid to take that first step. But like Vaughn knows people, like, who never raised chickens before, might be, like, afraid of, like, oh my God, I'm going to kill this poor creature, right? But we've got to kill this poor creature. We've got to get past that fear and take some of those first steps, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking about, I read a post today that was about, like, Alabama. I'm from Alabama, from Montgomery. And I was reading something about how Alabama is like the Amazon of the Americas, because it's such a huge temperate forest. And I didn't know anything about that. But it was talking about all the, like, biodiversity there, and we're just, like, slowly losing it because people don't realize, like, what they have in their own backyard. Like, I knew there were trees, like, I knew there were creeks, but I did not know that, like, we have 18 species of turtle and it's more than anywhere else in the world. Like, I didn't know that stuff. So again, like, knowledge is power. And then you feel inclined to protect it, you know, because we can't lose that. I could lose the mosquitoes.
Give us something. Hey, thank you for joining us and turning your camera on.
I was kind of sad that I said I was going to pick up some trees that was being cut down after talking about sustainability, but you know, I'm using the tree limbs to go feed the goats. So
boom, there we go.
It's not like I'm cutting, like, it's not like the person that's cutting the trees down is really doing anything bad, because they're cutting the trees down to grow a bigger garden. And instead of just throwing them out into a landfill, they're coming over here to feed the animals. So that's that. That's my take right there on sustainability for today. But I mean, I practice that every day.
Tell us more about what you practice. So we're all in an urban setting, just for viewers that are watching. We're all urban growers, farmers, or you know, learning more about growing in the urban setting. There you go. So Vaughn, there he is. Look at that.
We can have the conversation like this. So
I'm
right
pinning
now,
your video so that I can see these goats.
Right now in my background, you see well, this is Belle right behind me, and then Bailey's on the ground, and some of the other animals are further back. All the bees, they're over there, and then one's probably gonna be messing with my hair here in a second. But yeah, this is just the backyard, and I do this all from the backyard. Goal is teach a lot of this to other people. If you want to grow your own, have your own, I think it's something that we all are capable of, is whether or not you want to do it, how far you want to go. You mentioned rain barrels. I don't really keep rain barrels, but I do practice some type of water system practices here. This roof goes right down into what is a waterer for my animals, so I don't use any of my water, but I use the rainwater to give the animals their drinks for the day. But
aren't you
pretty much
starting
that.
like an aquaponics thing? I saw you had a live the other day, and you were cleaning out the bin you were gonna do.
That is in the hoop house. I got to get my pump working right, my pump and my filter going right. So it's not up yet, but it will be shortly.
That's so cool. So that's the reason I think, well, I guess the reason I think that one's really cool is when I was in California and I did a lot of juvenile justice work, and at juvenile hall, which they have a whole different like policy about juvenile hall. So like they had way less kids in there than literally like anybody else in the county I was in. But one of the things they did for the kids who had to stay, like they're obviously going to school at the hall, but they had them doing aquaponics gardening, and like they had their own garden on the field. And then in their science class, they were learning like the science of aquaponics and how to grow their tomatoes and stuff. And I was like, that is such a life skill. And I have a lot of opinions about juvenile justice systems in general, but like teaching life skills for kids who are in there is so huge. And things like aquaponics gardening, because you can do that at home. I've seen videos in like Syrian refugee camps where like they're in Israel and there's like laws about like being able to plant in the ground in some countries. And so they reuse mattress foam for their like hydroponic gardening system, where the foam holds the water and then it releases it down the pipes into the plants that they're growing. And it's like that kind of stuff is rebellious, and it's so like efficient. It's so efficient.
Yeah, definitely. Amanda, share with us a little bit more. You have an urban farm called Lots of Food, and you grow tons of things, but mostly big old trees. Tell us more real quick about that.
I have nuts. I'd have to say, like, I feel this great kinship with Letitia because both of us are like single women, crazy urban farmer people. And the names of our operations are both like goofy puns. So I love that. Mine is lots of food, which is like vacant lots. And when I bought the property from the city, I bought it for the purpose mainly of the orchard. I have almonds and hazelnut orchard there. And actually I just found like a dirty nut in my pocket of my pants I'm wearing today. So here's like one
now that's sexy.
I got nuts in a lot of pockets, I'll tell you what. Yeah, super sexy, the nuts in the pockets. Yeah, so I have almonds and hazelnuts over there. I also have around like the edges a lot of other perennially things like blackberries, passion fruits, various like
grapes.
Grapes, yeah, like fruits and nuts really is what I grow out there. And then I have like a lot of pollinator plants, sunflowers, some nice things up in the front as well. And the bees are there. So Vaughn, I'm excited. I didn't know you were a beekeeper. Justin also keeps the bees out there at Lots of Food in the Portland neighborhood. And it has taught me a lot. Like when you have land, you pay attention to what's happening there. So I've really just enjoyed being there and seeing like there's reptiles, there's birds, there's snakes, there's like pollinators. It's wonderful. Yeah, if anybody wants to see Letitia visiting Lots of Food, there's like a precious YouTube video of Letitia Marshall visiting Lots of Food, where we didn't see a snake, but it's precious. So,
we didn't have to see the snake, honey. All she had to do is let me know that they were there.
Yeah,
honey, I got to scoot up out of there. But yeah, so your farm though is pretty incredible. There's not a whole lot of nut farms in Kentucky, and so like why, and should there be more?
I think so. I mean, here's the thing, like it's labor, like if it's not industrialized, it's a lot of labor to do this, right? But it's not obviously sustainable to grow a lot of things that we are eating right now, like to grow them in California or across the country where there's not water to grow those things, right? Where we have to like truck bees across the country just to pollinate this one monocrop of acres and acres and acres of something. It's not healthy for the bees. It's not really healthy for the world. So I really wanted to see us grow more of what we eat, like grow more of what's on our plate, like right here in our own place, and just to see how much of that we can do and to show people that you can do it. And it turns out like, yeah, almonds and hazelnuts are actually possible to grow here. I would say the almonds probably are doing even a little better than the hazelnuts. The hazelnuts are like so from year to year. But it's really just a demonstration project for people to like help expand our minds a little bit, like, yes, you can grow blackberries in your front yard. If you ever never thought about it, like they're very easy to grow. So have those on the front fence. People walking by can eat them. Maybe, 1 out of 100 people walking by is like, hey, I'd like to grow some of those too. Like, look, those are just growing in somebody's front yard. Like, why couldn't I grow those? So same thing with the nuts. Really just an experiment for myself, but to show other people like, hey, this is kind of fun, and you can crack them while you are watching TV if you are inclined to watch TV, which I am not.
And while you're growing trees, you're also doing other great things for the world.
Yeah.
You're tackling our urban heat island effect. You're making oxygen. You're fixing carbon. So there's lots of reasons to pursue agroforestry, even in the heart of our city, as a solution for us. And there's also, I mean, Amanda talks about the labor of it. In some ways, it's less labor than annual crops might be too. So there's lots of ways to think about it. And you really, if you want a sustainable farm, you're doing lots of different things on it, and trees are just part of the solution, right? But to me, all of this stuff we're talking about, what makes this hella sexy, y'all, is that we are talking about being producers and not just consumers. And to me, that's exciting, right? Like every human is a consumer. We all do that. But what makes a person interesting is what they produce and the creativity they use to do it. And we're only going to get to sustainability if we use creativity to get there, because it's about using those available local resources and thinking differently about how we produce and even what we eat. And so thinking about maybe eating one of those native pawpaws, maybe a lot of people never even heard of a pawpaw. What the heck is that? You're not going to find it on your grocery store shelf. You're probably not even going to find it at a farmer's market. You got to grow grow it your own or go out and harvest it yourself. And when you can see the world with those eyes, that makes the world interesting and makes you an interesting person and magnetic, right? People love signing up for Amanda's foraging workshops because it's like pulling back a veil. I'm like, look at all this deliciousness that's all around us that you don't even see, my friends, because society has told you not to even look over there, right? That's sexy.
Yeah, if only I was like as sexy as that girl on TikTok. I'm not, but it's okay. It's still fun.
No, don't police your own sexy.
Right.
Not in this house.
Don't police your own sexy. I love
Not in this
that.
house.
Oh my gosh,
You're
y'all.
getting a t-shirt
No.
going.
Yes, I swear I'm gonna put on a t-shirt and I'm gonna let y'all know when it happens. No, but that is very well said, Justin. Thank you so much. Y'all, we could talk about this all night. Like really, I've learned so much, and just hearing everybody's perspective. It just, I continue to grow, right? I'm not only trying to produce and bear fruit, but I want to grow as well. And I definitely want, yes, that's a play on the channel and my business.
Yeah, okay.
But check out bearfruitgrow.com if you haven't already. Louisville, lots of food. Justin Mogg with sustainability, Forward Now Radio. Bond at Kentucky and Backyard Farms. He is on Instagram, hit him up. And I also just posted a video a few days ago of our tour of his farm. So if you have not checked that out, go check out Kentuckiana Backyard Farms, the video. I called that on my channel. Melina, up and coming lawyer in Kentucky, Zone 7A, but she has a ton of experience in policy work, advocating, reckoning, making sure that people understand what a TI is, because it's going down over here with the Urban Ag Coalition in Louisville, Kentucky. We are excited to just continue these conversations. Y'all know I'm bound to talk about anything. And somebody had actually mentioned in the comments, Amanda, you had talked about your property used to be vacant properties. And so that is a hot topic now. We're not the only city that's having trouble, it seems, building relationships with the city in some way, form, or fashion to make that happen, and specifically utilizing those vacant properties for agricultural use. And so, you know what? Maybe that's our next topic of discussion, but we're going to wrap it up because I've held these people all evening. Thank you all so much for joining me. Justin, thank you, Melina. Thank you, Vaughn, for chiming in. You all have a good rest of the day. And we're going to check out, though. Go back and hit the replay button if you have not viewed from the beginning.
And the notification bell, Letitia. Don't forget.
Yes, ma'am.
That's right. That's right. If everybody have YouTube channels, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channels. There's definitely YouTube channels.
Like and subscribe. You got to help that algorithm.
Yep.
Yeah, y'all take care. We'll holler at you.
Kentuckiana Backyard Farms YouTube channel is coming soon.
Ooh, nice.
Ooh.